Welcome back to The Hard Shoulder, and welcome specifically to a new slot here on the programme. It's called Down to Earth. Maybe it should be called Down to Earth with a bang for Ivan, because we're going to discuss everything to do with the environment, from climate change to hugging trees, with our resident environmental expert, Dr. CaraAugustenborg. And this week, we're going to look at the impact of flying on our climate. Out of sight, out of mind. Now, I look up in a blue sky and I see these two little grey lines behind it, which I assume are the exhaust fumes. Should I be concerned, Cara?
Well, just like any burning of fossil fuels, we should be concerned about aviation the same way we should be concerned about driving. Anything that burns fossil fuels has an impact on climate change. And airplanes in particular are a bit of a concern because they fly so high up in the atmosphere, particularly the jet airliners. And so they have an added impact on climate change because they're directly injecting these pollutants into the atmosphere.
Does it make a difference that they're doing it at 35,000 feet instead of on terra firma?
Yes, it does actually. So even propeller planes and planes that fly lower in the atmosphere have less of an impact on climate change than the bigger jet airliners that fly higher.
Why so?
Well, part of it is because the airplanes emit lots of pollutants, including carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, black carbon. But one of the pollutants they emit is an oxide of nitrogen. And when that is high up in the atmosphere, it's very easy for that to form ozone, which is a potent greenhouse gas.
Okay. And so therefore, if we were comparing a kind of jumbo jet carrying 400 people on a transatlantic flight, would that be equivalent to 50 cars, one car? Give me a sort of equivalent, or kind of belching cows. What would it be equivalent to?
So the most popular flight outside of Ireland from Dublin is to London, for example. And each of us, if we take a plane to London, would emit about 150 kilograms of carbon dioxide. If we opted to pop our cars on a ferry and drive to London instead, we'd emit about the same amount of carbon dioxide because, let's be honest, I mean, traveling in a 1,000-kilogram car is a pretty inefficient way to travel. But if we took a train and took a ferry instead, we would emit 70% less carbon dioxide as a result of that trip.
Okay, we see an exponential increase, for example, in the statistics in Dublin Airport. Passenger numbers a year have gone from 12 million to well over 20 million. So how bad is the situation getting as more and more people opt to fly? Well,
since 1999, the number of passengers flying in the air has doubled since then. And it's projected to increase substantially as the growing global middle class increases. So it's important to know that only 18% of us actually fly in airplanes. The remaining 82% of the world's population has never actually been in an airplane. But we expect a lot of those people will start to fly as they want to have the same kind of lifestyles as other birds.
Would that statistic apply to Ireland?
No,
the 80-20, 80% not flying.
No, this is the global population.
Okay,
so
you're dealing with third world
developing
issues there.
world, absolutely.
Okay.
And in fact, Ireland, people in Ireland fly a lot more than most people. So Aer Lingus did a study last year that said that on average, people in Ireland fly nearly 7 times a year.
Okay, I suppose because we live in an island,
absolutely.
It's better than swimming.
Sure.
But anyway, no. So, what do you want done about this?
Well, there's a lot of things we could do, and we certainly need to do something because the projections for greenhouse gas emissions from aviation are that by 2050, we're looking at a 300 to 700% increase in greenhouse gas emissions just from aviation. So this is an issue we have to tackle because it's only going to get worse if we don't. And there are things we can do technologically. So it's interesting to note that Norway just announced that by 2040, they expect all of their short-haul flights will be run by electric aircraft. So they will actually have fully electric aircraft, which also means half the costs and half the noise of a traditional fossil fuel aircraft. So there are options.
But if your electric car can't get beyond Mullingar, I mean, will you come down you need a hell of a battery.
You do, but electric car technology is rapidly advancing. So already we have, the Zoe Renault who says they can get a 400-kilometer range. I mean, these are for short-haul flights that take less than 1.5 hours. Norway feels confident that they can do this via electric. But we also have biofuel technology. So many airlines now are experimenting with putting in biofuels and ethanol into airplanes to see can they get the emissions down. There are risks with that in terms of converting farmland and land that we now use to grow food food instead to grow fuel for the aviation industry. But it's certainly something that a lot of different companies are experimenting with.
Okay. Well, if one solution is electric planes, is there any other technical solution?
Well, my own favorite actually is Elon Musk's Hyperloop. So if
Hyperloop.
I don't know if you've heard of the Hyperloop, but
I've heard of loop-de-loop.
the idea is that it's an electromagnetic levitated pod that they will actually put underground. And Elon Musk announced this in 2016 to say that he predicted he could get one of these Hyperloops to go from San Francisco to Los Angeles, and it would only take you 30 minutes. So now...
Sorry, what is a Hyperloop?
It's a pod that goes underground, and it uses electromagnetic...
But you'd have to dig a tunnel.
Yeah, you dig a huge tunnel underground.
Right across the States.
Yeah, and these pods...
But you look at all the belching smoke that would come out of all the JCBs and diggers and drills and everything to build the tunnel.
Yeah, there's life cycle issues with all of this, and you could say the same thing for airplanes. But, this will transform. If it happens, it will transform how quickly we can get somewhere. So we can.
And what will power the Hyperloop?
Electric energy. So it'll be hopefully renewables, so wind, solar.
Okay.
The same.
That sounds to me like the solution could be as bad as the problem. But if it's your favourite, I'll let you stick with that, Gary. What about flying lower?
Flying lower and using...
Like, what are we talking about, 12,000 feet instead of 30,000?
We're talking about the elevations that the prop airplanes fly at. So propeller-based airplanes are considered more fuel efficient than these bigger jet airlines. So a lot of the gains that we've seen in fuel efficiency from airlines has been because they're using smaller planes. And so certainly a propeller plane is a better option than a bigger jet airline.
Okay. Biofuels?
Biofuels, so there's a lot of different experiments going on with various airlines in the US and in Europe looking at mixing.
What are we talking about there?
So we're talking about growing plant-based material and turning it into a fuel. And we've been doing this already with ethanol and with various here in Ireland. We grow biofuels sometimes to co-fire our peat burning power station. But so this is something that airlines have been looking at for even since 2008. And some flights have already been undertaken that have used biofuels.
Now, my wife went to Amsterdam for the weekend, and going out and coming back, she said there was quite a lot of turbulence on the flight. And is turbulence actually fumes? Is it those lines you see, is that, or is it just bad weather?
So this is interesting thing about climate change is that a new study came out last year by Paul Williams in the University of Reading that said they've already detected an increase in turbulence as a result of climate change. We know that climate change is causing wind speeds to increase and the jet stream to become more volatile, and they predict now that aviation will become more turbulent and they'll have more injuries as a result of turbulence between 2050 and 2080. In fact, 3 times more turbulence is what they're projecting as a result of climate change. So climate change has an impact on how comfortable our flights are too. Okay.
So I find on every study, it gives me the pip. People are talking about follow the Norway example. Childcare, pay levels, blah-de-blah-de-blah, and, maternity, everything. And you know what? Then you find, dig a little deeper, you know what? Norway's filthy rich because it's got lots of oil. We ain't got lots of oil. So why are you saying we should follow Norway in relation to what they're doing to reduce aviation emissions?
Well, look, Norway has dirty secrets too. I mean, they are exploiting Arctic drilling faster than any other country in the world. So I'm certainly not saying that Norway is perfect. But they have led the way in electric technology. So they have more EV sales, electric vehicle sales, than anywhere else in the world. In fact, half the new cars that are being bought in Norway are electric. So they can certainly lead on electric aviation. But I think Ireland in particular, we hold a majority of the world's aircraft leases in this country. So we have an opportunity to lead on aviation and addressing climate change simply because of our role in aircraft leasing.
Now, you always take this a step beyond government. You bring it back to personal responsibility, all this climate change kind of environmental stuff. So what should we be doing as individuals?
Generally, I try and avoid going into the whole personal responsibility thing because I do think the government has a large part to play in electrifying our energy grid and revitalizing our transport system. What, to not say it's personal responsibility?
No. In other words, like if we all took a holiday at home and
exactly.
and like me, leading an environmental example
Yeah.
by not flying. Would
Right.
that not be the way to go?
And so
Stay at home.
I was about to say, this is the one place where I would actually say that behavioral change would make even more of an impact. So if we take, for example, if we fly from Dublin to New York, we spend as much CO2 as if we heated our home for an entire year. So just giving up one flight could make a substantial difference in our individual carbon footprint, and particularly because if you're one of the 18% of people in the world who actually fly, you're
Well,
one
I
of the
deserve
elite.
a medal because back in the day, the team on News Talk used to love to do outside broadcasts in Boston and New York and Washington, and I've stopped all that because I don't fly. So I'm actually probably the entire town of Crumlin now. I am actually saving the winter emissions by cutting out junkets. So you think that if everyone does take a collective approach to less aviation, it would have an impact?
I think particularly in flying, because
Well, what would Michael O'Leary say?
he'd be very disappointed.
He'd have a kitten.
Yeah. But, there are a lot of people that are moving into this idea of what they call slow travel and staycations. And it is a growing movement of people who are refusing to fly or cutting back on flying. And to be quite honest, I hate flying now. It's very uncomfortable and it takes a long time to get from point A to point B. So I think this is a win-win for a lot of reasons.
And finally, of all the travel we do, public transport, private motoring, ferries you've outlined, is aviation the most pollutant?
Well, aviation is about equivalent to taking a car for one person driving a four-person car. But obviously with aviation, we drive many more kilometres. So that is why the impact is so much more significant. So.
Okay. Well, pending electric aeroplanes by 2030, Dr. CaraAugustenborg says you should be very conscious of the damage you're doing to the environment so high in the sky. Thank you, Cara. That is our slot on Down to Earth here on The Hard Shoulder for this week. And that's our lot on The Hard Shoulder for this Wednesday edition. My thanks to the entire team, editor Mark Simpson, producers Dan Flanagan and Emma Cawley, and researcher Ciara Courtney and Steve Daunt. On sound today we had Michael Quilligan and Peter Malloy. I'll be on the box again tonight from 11. I want to remind you how good Off the Ball is going to be tonight. You heard that earlier on the programme. Enjoy your evening. Thanks for listening and talk to you tomorrow at 4.